Mindfulness is simply bringing things to your conscious awareness, because we all have stuff that's bubbling up underneath the surface, and then something happens where we get activated and boom, there it is. But we don't know why that happened. So bringing things to your conscious awareness is one, and really being super keen on what's going on right now. The past is gone, can't do anything about it, and the future is still undecided depending on what your belief system is, right? So if you're actually hyper focused on what's going on right now and really being where your feet are, you can change a lot of things, and I love the saying, we're not human doings, we're human beings. So we get a chance to be and exist without expectation or responsibility. And I think if you don't have those moments, then when do you actually get a chance to be at peace? It's really difficult.
Welcome to another edition of the CYR Podcast, where we interview dope people. Today we got my boy, Bryan Mapenzi, here in the building. Well, actually, we not in my building, we in his building. We made a smooth little trip out here to make this one happen, man. How you doing today, bro?
I'm great, man. How are you?
I'm good, man. Tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, all that good stuff. Oh, actually. I'll give a soft introduction. So my boy is he's a jack of all trades, but his main focus is in the mental wellness and health space, where he is a mental wellness coach. He also has a degree in sports psychology, master's degree in sports psychology, and so they kind of intertwine and align. But wasn't really trying to be a therapist, which, I feel that. So soft intro, that's a little bit about you, but go ahead and dive a little deeper into who you are and what you do, man.
Yeah, man. Definitely taking me back to grad school days. So just like you, got the counseling degree and then had probably around 20 to 25 credit hours in sports psych. So the initial plan was to work with athletes. And then at the time I got into positive youth development too. So that's how we actually met when I moved to Nebraska. And then we were both working at doing the after school program stuff. So
I don't gotta drop no names, but it's all right. It's all right.
That's hilarious. Yeah. But yeah, doing the after school program and doing our thing, and coaching has always been a part of me. So I always took that to the space that I was in. So even when we were working there and leading people and managing, if you will, there was always a coach approach. It wasn't just telling people what to do, even though we all have things that we have to do, but being able to ask people questions and being able to cultivate and empower people. So that's always been my thing, I feel like, for as long as I can remember, and that's been important to me. And really just combining both the mental aspect of our lives with like this physical body that we live in. So now living here in Sacramento since July of 2019, spent quite a good bit of my time working with individuals one-on-one, but also doing training and development. Always, again, coming at it from a coach approach, getting people to come to their own answers and own conclusions without giving people the answer, empowering people to empower themselves. So I think that's the most important thing for me, and really looking at all my experiences with them and with myself from a holistic perspective.
For sure. Yeah. So bro, I just want to know, and I think a lot of people want to know too, because I think so many of us have like this capability to help others, right? And almost embody the position of a coach to people in our lives or people around us. But a lot of times we can do that for other people, but then it's hard to do it for ourselves.
Yep.
It's hard to give ourselves that same coaching or that same mindset shift that we can impart on other people. Have you ever found yourself in a position where some of the things that you work on with maybe some of your clients individually, it is difficult for it to transfer to you as your own person?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think looking back and, still even now, so I believe one of the most difficult things for me has been just continuing to navigate whatever is going on in my emotional experience and internally. In grad school, and I've shared this with you before, I lost a close person who was like a sister to me to suicide. And then right before I started my first job when I moved to Omaha, I lost a cousin to suicide, literally 3 or 4 days before I started working there. So those things are the type of experiences that just rock you to your core. And before that, I did a lot of repression of emotions, a lot of repression of emotions, a lot of repression of emotions. And I think that experience taught me that there's nowhere else to put anything at this point. It's either I'm gonna blow up or I'm gonna have a mental breakdown. And I was very close a couple times to being in that place, so I took it upon myself to start going to therapy when I was in Boston, and then continued that experience in Nebraska. And I think the hardest part about that is navigating how just because you're going to therapy doesn't mean that you're doing the work. Like, that's just, you're showing up, and like, it's great. And I will always champion people to do that if that's what they need for themselves. And it's just like self-awareness. That is a starting point. You have to keep getting to more starting points. That is not a finish line. So self-awareness is like, yes, I know these things, but it can often be a crutch as well too, because I have like this head knowledge, but how do I turn that into like embodied wisdom? How do I go to therapy and say, I'm doing the work now, I made it? And it's like, well, you have to be open and vulnerable in there to be like navigating those things and purging them and getting them out in a healthy way, instead of maybe continuing negative coping skills or whatever it may be that is actually hurting you and not helping you.
Yeah. I think you made a really good point. Just because you go to therapy does not mean you are actually doing the work.
Oh yeah.
A lot of people use therapy as a crutch, right? They'll use I go to therapy so I'm healing, and it's like, me as a therapist, I see a lot, and probably you as a coach too, you probably see a lot of people come in and they're stuck on the same thing week after week after week after week after week, because they're not actually taking the steps that are necessary to overcome whatever it is, that barrier, or like they're not digging deeper into the issue that you guys are diving into, or they might not even truly be being vulnerable about the thing that's actually at hand. I see so much of that where individuals are like, nothing's changing. I don't know what's going on. Like, I'm coming here. Why aren't you working your magic on me? And I'm like, first of all, if I wanted to be a magician, I would have joined the fucking circus, bro. First of all. Second of all, I'm not here to fix you, and you didn't come to this office for me to fix you. You came to this office to explore, to gain understanding if you are ready. And that's the key word, like, if you are ready. So many people are not ready when they come into therapy, which is where I get a little gripe, you know what I'm saying, with the whole mental health movement and everything, because so many people push go to therapy. And I won't act like I'm not somebody who doesn't encourage people to go to therapy. But I also give the caveat of, like, if you are ready, like, if you are willing to like do the work, if you are willing to be honest with yourself, if you are willing to really address the things and the issues that you've never like opened your mouth to tackle before.
Exactly.
And so I think what you mentioned is key, and it is big. But you also talked about just like experiencing suicide and within your close proximity or your close circle. Can you take us back to like where that had you mentally when people close to you were victim to suicide?
Yeah. I think the first week and a half for sure. Well, that's probably too far ahead. So I remember the moment, I remember the day, I remember it just like it was yesterday, and the ironic part, we were both from Cleveland, and we were both in grad school in Boston at the time. So I was at Boston University, and she was across the river in Cambridge at MIT. Brilliant human being, brilliant person, literally getting a PhD in astrophysics, wanted to be an astronaut. So just amazing character and essence of a person, And when I got that call from her younger sister, who was living with her at the time, like I said, across the river, I'm like, this can't be real. So I'm taking an Uber over there, and then I get there, and her younger sister's outside, like bawling her eyes. I'm like, man. And I had to like call my parents, because we've been cool forever. I had to call my parents on the phone and tell them this shocking, like gut-wrenching news, And for the first week and a half, I'm sure you've seen Spike Lee movies before, whether it's Do the Right Thing or Malcolm X or whatever. And there's always this scene where it's just like, you just like panning through and life is going by. That's what it felt like for the first week and a half, And I didn't tell too many people. I didn't tell my professors. I had summer classes. It was like it was actually Memorial Day of 2016. And I had summer class and I was trying to go along business as usual, which silly at the time, and it felt like I was just on autopilot. Like stuff was going by me. I wasn't really present. And then I just had to get to the point, and I told my professor, I'm like, I'm going through like a lot. And it was just really hard. Like that was my second year of grad school getting my master's. It was unbelievable, man. I think I missed like 10 days like that fall. Some days I'm in the morning, I have to wake up at 6 a.m. a couple times out the week, go to a practicum, stay there till like 9:45. I remember one day specifically, I'm on my way back to my apartment. I'm like, I can't do it. And it was wild because I remember eating like 40 cookies for dinner. Just stuff like that, man. I was barely making it, man. Missed like 10 days, like I said, that semester, and eventually like made up the work and was continuing to go to therapy and stuff. But it was just literally on the verge of like a mental breakdown like myself, and I'm in a mental health program, and I had literally done an interview with her maybe a week and a half before, doing like a mock therapy session. And I'm like, man, I should have saw this. I should have saw that. So there was some like survivor's guilt there as well too. And, being about 9 years out from it now, I've done like a significant amount of healing, but that still is always with me. And like, she's always with me. It's just, I always tell people in that experience, suicide doesn't get rid of the pain. It just transfers it to somebody else, right? So I would encourage anybody who was just like hurting or really just like reeling and feeling like they have nowhere to turn. You gotta really find people who can support you. And some people don't have a social support system, which makes it tough. Like we all need people that we can lean on. And we gotta be honest with ourselves first before we can be honest with other people. Because it makes it really hard, like what is actually going on like between our ears and like in here, so. I think for me, my saving grace was my professors throughout the year. They understood what was going on. They were amazing. I had a couple friends in my cohort who were great. And then I met my now wife literally 2 weeks before that. So she is also and still is an unbelievable support system like for me. So I think if you don't have that, it makes navigating life's ups and downs very, very difficult, and I would tell anybody the most important thing is to fight tooth and nail to find your tribe. It's absolutely paramount.
Definitely. Yeah. Bro, I can only imagine just experiencing that yourself.
Yeah.
And then I know this because we talked off camera a little bit, and I kind of want to tie it in. Just then having your own battle with your mental health too, and then also struggling with some ideation as well. The point that you made is that suicide doesn't get rid of the pain, but it just transfers the pain to someone else. How have you been able to cope and deal with your own mental health battles as well too? Especially, you know what I mean? Just like being a coach.
Yeah.
And I could even turn to say myself, you know what I'm saying? Like being a therapist, like people will have the perception of like, oh, you're perfect. You got it all together. Like everything's good. You don't struggle. You don't nothing. You talk about this, you talk about that. And it's like, yes, I do, because like I know these tools, I study these tools, I do these things. And these are things that I really make a conscious effort to practice and place in my life because I know that they work.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that you are, what's the word I'm looking for? It doesn't mean that you
Maybe
are
immune?
Yeah, it doesn't mean you're immune
to
experiencing the hardships of life. And especially if genetically or chemically you already have some imbalances or you have things that you're predisposed to. So how has your journey and your battle with your own mental health been in regard to that?
I would say to the last point you made, the genetic kind of disposition. My mom hasn't been diagnosed, but I could bet pretty confidently she has like low grade depression on a pretty regular basis. I forget what the clinical term for it is. Yeah. But it just seems like it's always there on simmer, And my dad definitely has seasonal affective disorder, particularly, living in Cleveland, dreary ass winters, no sun, that'll do it to you. Mm-hmm. So I think because of that, and my dad dealing with his own depression as well too, there may be a chemical component, genetic component to it as well. And then, again, life's factors kind of come into play. So I think for me, when that happened, I think I had one depressive episode before that, like in undergrad. And it was pretty light. I was able to navigate through it again, leaning on the people that I love and support me. The one that I went through after I lost Ashley was just brutal. And it felt like it lasted for a long time, and it went up and down and then kind of stayed on simmer for a long time. And I'm what I would like to call, by and large, a high functioning person who is struggling with depression. I get up, I go to work, I do all of those things, but I'm more irritable. You can tell there's something going on with me. I'm just not me. I'm not the normal me. And I did that in undergrad, like I said, when I was playing baseball, things weren't going the way I wanted them to, like in my senior year. And then when I lost Ashley, that was one of those moments where I couldn't fake the funk anymore. Like I was getting lambasted. And I had to like be real with myself. Like I said, I had nowhere to repress any more emotions. The top was about to blow off. There was nowhere else to put it. It was going to be an explosion in some way. So I was able to navigate it by, like I said, going to therapy myself. I started in the College Counseling Center at BU. Yeah. I wish that would have been a better experience. However, it still gave me a taste like with therapy. So then I started going to somebody in the community. I was floored and impressed by the fact that it was only $10. Best $10 I ever spent in my life. Because usually therapy can get pricey for folks.
Yeah.
But it was $10. I went to her from February to when I graduated in May. And I think I had one other session with her like thereafter. And she asked me when I started to like really repress emotions. I'm like, dang, nobody's ever asked me that question. I never thought about it. And then it took me back to like my childhood and like experiences I had there, So she was, I think her name was Chinny. She was the best foundation I could have had to like start unpacking. I hate that word. Start diving into some of this stuff that was actually holding me back. And the irony, like you said, just because we're maybe more intentional about navigating some of this social, emotional, and mental stuff doesn't mean that we're immune. I was in a program for this and I hadn't done up to that point enough self-work to be conscious enough to figure out what was going on, why my behaviors were a certain way, and why I was behaving that way based on things that happened to me like in childhood. So I think that foundational piece then in 2016, 2017 was kind of the catalyst to me becoming a different person. And then of course the person I am now.
Yeah. Real quick, I almost forgot. As a licensed therapist, I'm big on mental health and I'm big on making sure that you're taking care of you. And I also want to get rid of this stigma that we got towards mental health. Like there's nothing wrong with talking to a therapist. And so if you're somebody that's out there that really wants to start getting their mind right, who wants to really start understanding their emotions and being able to process things that you probably repressed, that you probably ain't talked about, that you might have been even ashamed about talking about. Or check this out. You might not be ashamed about it and you just ain't found a person for you to talk to. You want to find somebody that's relatable, that can understand you. You got a little swag, you know what I'm saying? A little swag. And they not too far removed. Make sure that you tap in with Bear Company Counseling. All you got to do is hop down in the description, click the link, put in your info, and the front desk rep will reach out to you and get you plugged in with a therapist that I promise you, as long as you're ready, will help you to get whatever you need right up here so that you can succeed in every other avenue and aspect of your life. Tap in with a therapist today at Bear Company Counseling. Now, you can get back to the video for real. I promise I won't hop back in again. Self-work is what therapy is supposed to be about. I was gonna say what therapy is all about, but that's what it's supposed to be about. Your therapist should be somebody who enables you to feel comfortable and feel ready to really dive into self.
Yep.
So many times we see people become like super comfortable with their therapist, which I think on one hand is good because it means you have a strong and solid rapport. But then on the other hand, it might cause complacency because now I no longer believe I need to do the self-work because I can come in here, I could shoot the shit, I could talk about the surface level and maybe just a little bit under the level issues that I have going on, but it doesn't really push me to dive deeper into self. I believe that is like one of the greatest indicators as to whether or not your therapist is like actually helping you.
Yes.
And I don't think it's a bad thing to say like, I need to stop seeing you right now.
Of course.
I think so many, like there's a lot of people, I always say this. I always say like so many people are a lot of people, but y'all gonna have to just deal with that. So many people fall into like a cycle of guilt where it's like, I can't tell my therapist that this isn't working for me, or I can't stop seeing my therapist because then I'm in the wrong and like now I'm not working on myself. But the experience really has to come back to you, the client, and am I being placed in a position where I'm being challenged to look deeper?
Yeah.
Where I'm being challenged to question like my own thought processes, where I'm being challenged to reflect and analyze and really start to look at like some of those different things. And you mentioned, right, like your therapist, Chinny, right? You said her name was Chinny. Your therapist, Chinny, she really set a foundation for you to look at like, when did I start repressing my emotions? That is probably the biggest thing that I would say like Gen X, no, we're gonna go forget Gen X, man. No, we love you, Gen X. We love you. We love you. And not the Gen X in Omaha. Y'all used to sell them tall tees, man. Bring back the tall tee. No, like Gen, I think what is it? Gen Y and
that's
millennials.
Us.
You Gen, no, don't say us.
You're a millennial.
I'm a millennial.
I'm a millennial.
Gen Y is millennials?
Yes.
Okay.
Gen Z, because Gen Y, Gen Z, yeah.
All right, I didn't.
We never call ourselves that though.
Gotcha.
It's weird.
I was about to say, man, because that sounded old, bro, and I don't want to sound. I didn't want to sound old. All right, so then we can. All right, look, we can throw in Gen X.
Hey yo, I'm done.
I didn't. In my mind, I'm over here thinking like it's Gen X, Gen Y, millennial, Gen Z. And I'm like Gen X is old.
Letters and gang signs.
All right, so look. All right, so Gen X and millennials. One of the biggest things that I noticed that we struggle with, because that's primarily what my client base is like we've learned to repress our emotions. And it's because we're unconsciously taught that by our parents, because that's what they did and that's what they did. But now we're in a place where we're making a point, and society is making a point to acknowledge emotions, maybe sometimes almost to a detriment, and not in the most healthy of ways.
Yeah.
But the fact still remains, like we struggle with emotional expression in a healthy way, right? Because not all emotional expression shows emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
And so I guess I want to ask for you, after I just went on this tangent, in your life, where did you notice your emotional repression begin?
Definitely teenage years. And I'll start this caveat here, or disclaimer. I have a really good relationship, like, with both of my parents, and we get in there. We talk about past stuff. We talk about the real. Talk about things we've done to both hurt each other. But in my teenage years, like my dad was hard on me. I think hard on both me and my sister, but definitely hard on me. Super strict. Could be verbally abusive at times. Could be emotionally abusive at times, and physically abusive. So I think I was the child who was trying to get out of the way of any potential tirade or whatever. So I was more I guess you could say a yes man in a lot of ways. I was just kind of acquiescing and saying whatever just to avoid potential backlash, And as I got older, clearly that is no longer a functional behavior. And I also realized in relationships too, this relationship in the beginning, much less now, but still happens sometimes. I'm very much a stonewaller. If somebody is saying something that I can perceive as potential criticism, I get defensive in the way of silence, can't get through. I done built this fortified wall around me and my heart and my emotions. And Bryan has gone. He has gone on vacation, just disassociated, took off. So I had to continue to work through these things from like childhood and my teenage years of, people who love you the most, not necessarily showing that love and care that you need, And I think we've talked about this a lot. Kids, when their brain isn't fully functioning, they don't differentiate even small stuff. It's like, I need to be picked up now and you're not picking me up. That happens enough times and things happen enough times and it's a snowball rolling downhill. And then there's like a sacred wound that is caused, right? And that's on the light end. obviously the far end is, being hit or being talked to like you're nothing, whatever it may be. So when you get to be an adult, sometimes these things have formed where you are trying to acquire the love that you didn't get, or show your parents like, hey, look at me now, like, aren't you proud of me? Trying to get that validation. And I realized for me, that's hyperachievement. That is being a controller, trying to control every single thing because I need everything to be perfect, being very much a stickler about how things go. Because the idea, particularly around hyperachievement for me, is I want to do well. I want to put out good things into the world, and I want that to be reflected back to me as well too. And I also realize my carrot chasing is about trying to get validation, like from my parents, and have them be like, see, like, I can do it now. I don't do things half-assed. I'm a better student. I didn't fail a bunch of classes. Can't you see me, right? And that is still something I struggle with, like, to this day. And it's often a point of contention, like for me and my wife, because I never saw an opportunity I couldn't say no to. And I think when you're young in your career, you want to say yes to as many things as possible because it puts you in different rooms. It puts you in different opportunities to network. But at this point in my life and in my career and in my relationship, saying yes to everything means saying no to the person that I say that I care about the most. It means saying no to having capacity to actually pour as much emotional intimacy as I can or should into my relationship. Can or should. Should is a dangerous word, but we'll say should for right now, right? But want to, and there's a little bit of cognitive dissonance. It's like, I say I want to do this, but I'm doing this. I say that this person is the most important person to me, and I'm doing this. So how do I, again, turn back inward, be self-reflective, and say, you know what? You should probably say no to that thing because it's going to take away from some over here. And we were talking about this other day around what am I going to have to sacrifice for that thing? Just like opportunity cost. Something is going to have to, there's a balance. And I always talk about this idea of like work-life well-being. There's no 50-50 balance with everything because nobody only balances two responsibilities. Yeah. It's ridiculous. So how do we find the proper balance for us as far as navigating that experience and navigating our emotions? Like you said, just because you're emotionally expressive doesn't mean that you're emotionally intelligent. If I'm angry and I'm expressing that emotion, maybe I leave a wake of disaster behind me and scorched earth. That doesn't mean that I'm emotionally intelligent. We have to find a way to not just cope with all of these things, but understand our capacity and our ability to communicate these things in a way that is going to be right in a relationship and maybe not just right about whatever we're talking about.
That's big. That's big, bro. Can you dive deeper into that, bro, and talk a little bit more about that? Because I think communication and being able to communicate the things that we're experiencing is such an integral part of relationship, whether that's relationship with friends, whether that's relationship with family, whether that's intimate relationships and so on and so forth.
Yeah. It's always funny, man. One of the big things that I coach people on is communication. People are like, oh, I want to be better, or I want to be better at communication. I'm like, we all communicate. The idea is how effective are we being at that, and, people do passive aggressive things, and oftentimes that can be very much the nonverbal cues. That can be the crossing of the arms. That could be the rolling of the eyes. It could be literally turning our posture in a way that is not open and receptive to what is being said, and none of us are immune to when that nervous system gets activated and you are transported to another place because it's no longer about the thing that we wanted to actually talk about. I think the most important thing for effective communication is, who am I actually talking to? And this could be at work, this could be in our personal lives. Who am I actually talking to? What type of trust have I built with this person? Because if we don't really know them, if we're not continually trying to get to know them, and I'm thinking about like in a romantic relationship or like with a friend, if we just assume that we have all of the answers, there immediately is opportunity for things to fall through the cracks, misconceptions that happen, and then we're missing each other. As you know, active listening is a skill that most people don't do. And again, how do we avoid our nervous system taking us to that place where we don't want to be? And I think that's the main thing. There's always space in between what is heard, what's being said, and then when we actually respond to said things. So we have to think about, how do we find moments in that pause section, that sacred pause in the middle, to really navigate what the hell is going on? Because believe me, we have conversations offline where I be talking crazy, saying all types of wild stuff. And I know that this is a way for me to blow off steam. And I know that I'm not actually going to do these things that I could that would just really mess up the situation at hand, right? How do I navigate it and say, you know what? Let me slow down, take a breath, realize that this thing that I'm so frustrated about now, or that is really getting in my craw, will I care about it in 2 hours? Will I care about it in 2 weeks? By and large, the answer is usually always no. But how do we actually teach people or teach ourselves that? You can't try to fix problems when you're in the problem. When you're already activated, I mean, you can be the best emotional regulator in the world, but if you're at a 9, there's very few things that are going to get you off of that ledge when you're ready to fuck shit up. Like, that's just the reality. So what are we doing to practice outside of heightened conflict and heightened disagreements? That is where we actually do the work, the self-work that we're talking about.
Definitely.
You know? So I think that's kind of where it starts.
It sounds like it's all running along the line of just like your whole premise of your coaching, which is mindfulness. How would you say you personally define mindfulness? Because we've heard the buzzword, like people talk about be mindful, mindfulness, like, you know, all the little cliches and shit.
Yeah.
But like, how do you define mindfulness when it comes to your core, your curriculum, what you implement with the clients that you work with?
Yeah. I think it would be 2 sentences, and you could, you know, whatever works for people.
Neither.
Just bring it.
No, my bad, bro. My bad.
Cool.
Go ahead.
I think mindfulness is simply bringing things to your conscious awareness. So if you think about the term like woke that people have, being woke is essentially mindfulness from an internal perspective as an individual. I want to bring things to my consciousness because we all have stuff that's bubbling up underneath the surface. And then something happens where we get activated and boom, there it is. But we don't know why that happened. Maybe we don't know why it happened. Maybe we aren't aware enough. So bringing things to your conscious awareness is one, and really being super, super keen on what's going on right now. The past is gone. Can't do anything about it. And the future is still undecided, depending on what your belief system is, right? So if you're actually hyper-focused on what's going on right now and really being where your feet are, you can change a lot of things, you know? So if people are really taking the moments to be able to do that, I think you can change a lot of situations, right?
Yeah.
You really can.
Yeah. So how do you balance being mindful yourself personally while also navigating the people that you work with and helping them to become conscious and aware? Because it can be difficult, even as a therapist, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's days where I'm going into the office, bro, and I'm about to see like 5, 6, 7, you know, sometimes 8 people, just depending on how my schedule is looking. And then it's like, I got my own stuff going on, and I gotta help you navigate your trauma, your mess, your stuff.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the day, like, I still got this here, you know what I'm saying? And so I have to be really intentional about, or sometimes like I'm, you know, that intentionality slips through the cracks. But yeah, how do you navigate practicing your mindfulness while helping others become mindful as well too?
I think the most important part for me is, I can't even say most important. There's a few factors I would say. Having routine is important for me. Some people will say I'm a little too rigid about that. But I love the mornings where it's quiet. I wake up without my alarm between 5:30 and 6 every day, and I don't press the issue if it's a little bit later. You know, I'll come down here or I'm in my office and I'll prep some tea. I'll do some journaling, just kind of writing down 5 things I'm grateful for, what can make today excellent, you know, kind of back to that what's going on right now piece, and then do an affirmation. And then I'll start reading, you know, whatever book it may be that's, you know, at the top of my list at the moment. So I'll read for about 15 minutes, and while I'm doing that, I'll sip my tea, and then I'll kind of glide into whatever is going on for the day. But it's really intentional about like that routine in the morning, because there's no expectations from a partner at that time. There's no demands from work that are going on. I leave all of that stuff at the door because there's no place for that in my sacred time and space, whether, like I said, it's in my office or down here on the couch. So I think that, although a small thing, for 30 to 45 minutes, I get to just be. I don't have to be doing, and I love the saying, we're not human doings, we're human beings. So we get a chance to be and exist without expectation or responsibility. And I think if you don't have those moments, then when do you actually get a chance to be at peace? It's really difficult. So I think that's a perfect start to my day, because I'm a very high strung person. If I was with somebody at 6 a.m., I could be talking about existential stuff for 3 hours to start the day. I think that would be ideal, and that would be okay with me. Some people I need my tea, I need my coffee. Don't talk to me. I don't need none of that static that you're talking about. Leave me alone. But it's great for me to slow down, because I think once my feet hit the ground throughout the day, I'm cooking. I'm doing all of the stuff I need to do, whether that's getting on my bike, working out in the gym in the garage, washing dishes, work stuff, coaching sessions, prepping, training, and development. I'm in the process of starting to build out the framework for this project at work, doing on-demand coaching stuff and guided mindfulness sessions for people. So there's always stuff to be done. So I think when I'm able to start the mornings that way, that is significantly helpful for me. I would say the second piece is really figuring out and being honest with myself about where's my energy going throughout the day, where's my time going throughout the day, and where am I directing my attention. So I would say those three things in a way are primarily what I can really control. I can control how much energy I give to something. Maybe a project is going to take 15 minutes, but I spend 20% of my energy on that thing. That's probably too much. I know that time is finite. So again, with the energy piece, they're kind of all mingled together. I'm going to give maybe 15 to 20 minutes to something, not going to give it an hour when I know that it doesn't require such. And then the attention piece. I think where we draw our attention creates our perceptions and how we see things, and that really colors our experience on a day-to-day basis. So some things like social media, for example, I haven't been consistently on social media outside of LinkedIn since July 2021. For some people, that's probably insane to even think about. But for me, I knew that it was something that was no longer serving me in the way that I wanted it to. And I'm currently reading a book called Digital Minimalism. And it's not about just being anti-social media, because it's obviously beneficial in many ways. But to assume that they don't intentionally create things the way they do so you can become behaviorally addicted to things on the platforms is, I think that would be naive of us all to think. They are making money based on our clicks, based on our swipes, based on doom scrolling, all of these things. The longer you stay on the platform too, with the ads, the more likely you're gonna buy something. So all of this is tied together. And I realized for me, it was no longer bringing me peace, and the cost benefit of staying on was just not good. It was no longer beneficial. So I think really being intentional about how I use social media, whether it's YouTube or whatever, which YouTube is now something that I spend probably most of my time on, and still trying to dial back on that and be more intentional and mindful about that experience. So I think, again, to the first piece, having that routine in the morning and then in the evening now too, and then figuring out where my energy, time, and attention are actually being drawn throughout the day, and what can I do to maybe change those numbers and my experience with that, because I think that colors our world in such a big way.
Gotcha. Well, something that you mentioned, and I believe is super important, is just having that time to be, right? You mentioned a lot of good things, but I really want to dial it back to that, because I think everything else, you hit it right on the head. Just having that time to be and being intentional about the time that you have in the morning, so that you have that time to just, you know what I'm saying? I know there was probably a point in time where you weren't practicing this.
Yeah.
I want to talk about what did life look like then? How long you had to practice that before you really started to notice a difference in your life, and what does life look like now?
Well, I can take it back to Omaha when I was seeing you in person more often.
Yeah.
I think I was on that low grade depression meter, and I can tell you that I was still waking up early, but I would spend hour and a half in bed, bullshitting on, watching YouTube, reading stuff, looking at stuff that, if I think about it now, was that serving me? Was that benefiting my life actually? Hell no. Mm-hmm. But I was stuck. I was really, really, really stuck. And I think that continued until after we left Omaha. We moved here, like I said, July 2019. And I was big stress. Just new job, moved to a new place, trying to cultivate a support system, sick. And lo and behold, here comes a little worldwide pandemic. at the crib. Now it's like, oh, I no longer have a 40-minute commute one way. I'm up in the mornings doing walks. I'm listening to books. I'm doing these things that I would love to have more quote unquote time for or make more time for. And now it has been gift wrapped for me. So that is when things started to change. Not only did I start having more opportunities to embrace people at work and start doing more coaching things because I wasn't at the time. It felt like my professional experience changed overnight. I literally went from April of 2020 working one job and then getting a promotion in 2 months because of things that were happening. And all of this was because I changed my mindset. I changed how I was looking at things. My perspective shifted. So then the world around me started to shift. You know, it's just like becoming enlightened with mental and emotional health. If we keep spinning our wheels in the same spot, you know, or if you do what you always do, you're gonna get what you always got. And I think I had to do something different. Otherwise, my life was gonna become something that was eventually unbearable, and I was going to potentially be in another depressive episode, like a real deep one, you know? And the pandemic, obviously a lot of people lost their lives, but that was a blessing in disguise for me because it gave me more time to take a look at myself, if I'm being honest. And I think that's when coaching kind of got back in my frame of reference. You know, I started coaching again in this new role that I was in back in 2021. It would have been, well, August of 2020, actually. I'm sorry. And then doing training and development. And that's essentially what I do now. And that's really like my wheelhouse where I get to connect with people and interact with people and like see people's strengths and help them be seen and heard. Like that is just really where I feel like I do my greatest work. And it feels like a superpower to just like allow my vitality and like my zest and zeal for life to be poured out into other people. That's always something that really vibes with me.
I truly believe that the biggest transformations happen when we're in isolation. I think a perfect example of that in nature is like a caterpillar turning into a butterfly. It literally isolates itself from the rest of the world in order to transform into this thing that has so much more freedom.
Yeah.
Because if it doesn't do that, right, it's stuck on its belly, like laying prey to everything else around it. In this scenario, like there is no prey really except to our own self and our own vices, right? And it's not until we are placed in predicaments and situations where like we have nothing but our thoughts, right? Like the pandemic was perfect, bro. Like there's only so much Netflix you can watch. It's only so much that you can stroll before you start seeing the same video over and over again, because at that time Web 3.0 was not where it's at now. Now they just feeding people everything all the time, and you will not see the same video.
Bottomless pit.
Bro, it's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah, y'all be careful with that, with them Instagram reels, that Facebook, that YouTube, all that. They know what they doing.
Oh, my mama.
Nah, I promise you. But yeah, the greatest transformations that we go through is when we are isolated from everything around us, and we really have the time, and we acknowledge that we need to cultivate the skill of self-reflection. Now I'm about to dive in your pocket, so I'm not gonna dive too deep, bro. So just follow me, okay?
All right, I'm following.
I know from watching your journey and watching you go through your own transformation and being a friend to you and all of that.
Yeah.
I know that mentally things have changed. But also, bro, like when we start to progress and we start to grow mentally, bro, everything else is subject to grow and change as well too. And I know something that grew and changed for you were your finances, bro.
Yeah.
I think we were talking just off the cuff either a day or two ago, and you were like, yeah, man, before the pandemic, my credit score was da-da-da-da, and you know, my pockets were da-da-da-da, and I created this list and I'm knocking all this stuff off the list, bro. Can you talk about how being intentional with self and really embodying mindfulness started to make shifts outside of just your mind?
Yeah. I think I have to give a lot of credit to my wife.
Shout out, Rach.
Yeah, she has been a catalyst for so much growth in me. And I would say she lit the flame. I think those things were always inside of me. But oftentimes we need somebody to light the flame. It's like the pilot light on a stove. Without that, nothing else is going to get started. So she has been a pilot light for me, I would say. We got engaged, bro. And it would have been March 14th, 2018. We got engaged. I'm like, damn, I need to get my shit together. But I took that upon myself. She wasn't like, babe, I need you to get your credit score together. It's over with, right? I took that upon myself and I'm like, I want to be an equal partner in this relationship. So that would have been March of 2018, which is crazy. That was 7 years ago. So I just went on this journey. All right, stop ducking these collectors when you know you got to pay these bills. So it's probably 2 or 3 at the time. I'm not sure exactly what my credit score was, but I'm thinking in the low to mid 6s. So not good enough to get the best rates if I needed to do something. And I knew at some point we probably want to have a house. We probably want to have kids. We want to do all of these things that require capital to do. So started chipping away at it, man. And I know Rach, she was in grad school, didn't have a whole bunch of bills, which was good, but also wasn't making hardly any money. So we just went on this journey, bro. And I remember before we moved here, and right when we got here, had a credit card. I think hers, using it in grad school, had $20K on that joint. And we just were like, you know what? We could get pissed, we could get upset about this number, or we could tackle this and be like, you know what? We're gonna do this together. We're gonna ensure that we try to set ourselves up to be in a positive situation like in the future. And we got busy. I think we paid it off over the next year and some change, probably like a year, 2-3 months, paid it off. And I'm trying to think other debt that we have. The student loans, that's a whole nother
We dying with those, bro. We die. Yeah, that's
a whole nother podcast.
How to die with student loans in America, bro. Like for real.
Oh my gosh. Had me sick to my stomach if I think about it too long. So right now, just fast forward, thinking about building these positive financial habits. For me, I've always been really good with numbers. I've always been adept with finances from a cognitive sense, but just because you know something again in your head doesn't mean that you can create positive behavioral changes to create a reality that you want. So like I said, I had to stop ducking and dodging and be honest with myself. And sometimes being honest with yourself is painful. Looking in that mirror is like, ooh, that nigga a little uglier than I thought. So I think after doing that and working through these things like with Rachel, 2018, 2019, and again, the pandemic, that changed things significantly for people. It made you think a lot about like, man, like maybe I don't need to buy this. Maybe I don't need to buy that. Maybe it actually isn't beneficial to spend X amount of dollars on this. And we had our own, reckoning and awakening with that as well too. So the first day that I saw my credit score after doing like this work was over 700 would have been probably April or May of 2020, So I spent 2 years just paying down these debts, getting rid of these collectors. And it's like, all right, well, I no longer have credit card debt. I just have my student loans. And then because we had paid all these things down, my credit score was going up, continued to go up. And in October of 2020, when interest rates hit the floor, we were able to get a house. Wasn't even on the radar, dog. It really wasn't. We had just been saving, putting money aside, a little bit here, a little bit there, because we weren't making a super large amount like initially when we got here. And our diligence and our being good stewards of money gave us the opportunity to, I think we put $17,000, including closing costs, down for like this house. And considering like how much it's worth now, like that was the best investment financially that we've ever made. And I would say now at this moment, just continue to do that, not having like any debt. Shouldn't say that. Outside of student loans, outside of the house. But one could quote unquote say that's good debt. That can be a conversation or debate depending on who you are. But I think it was, particularly the house, it was an amazing financial investment. And even though grad school cost me an arm and a leg, the best thing I got out of that was my wife. So the experience, it wasn't even about the school. The fact that I met her during that journey, that's worth all of King Midas's gold. So for me, I think being a good steward and really understanding the behavioral stuff that's going on in your head. If anybody wants to read a book about money, that's about the behavioral piece and about the emotional piece that we all have a tie to as far as that. The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel is absolutely phenomenal. It'll really make you think about what's most important for you. Nobody gets to tell you how you handle money. They don't get to tell you what's important. But I think, again, if we're honest with ourselves, we can see areas that we might want to touch on and do some work on. And a lot of this, again, tied to childhood stuff. What is the money story that you got taught growing up? For me, it was money doesn't grow on trees and, it's scarce. And even if that wasn't maybe the case all the time from a reality standpoint, if you hear that enough, guess what? You embody that. That is your experience. So I'm like, dang, money don't grow on trees. Well, I'm about to spend it all, you know? I remember getting my first credit card, line of credit, blew through it. Collections. First time ever having credit. Collections. So that was like my journey and experience when I was 19 years old. So from 19 now to being 36 and like really just going through absolute melee times and getting my ass busted and then realizing you can do different, you know? They do definitely prey on us. I will say that. And the world has its own systemic messed up stuff. And if we're being honest again with ourselves, really looking inwards, there are so many things that we can control that we shirk or we dismiss and say like, oh, like I can't focus on that, yada, yada, yada. I don't have fill in the blank. What if we actually really looked inward and tried to navigate a lot of the things with our emotions and how we thought about things? A lot of the problems would get solved. If every individual person did a real deep introspection, the world would change. A lot of systemic things would change, you know?
It's so easy. It's so easy though to just look outward and just say, this needs to change, that needs to change. It's harder to do this one, right? Because this one takes the most amount of work. Talking about what needs to change on the outside, I can say that and then walk away. And you deal with that, you know what I mean? So I think you make a real good point, bro. But I want to dive a little bit deeper, bro, because your lifestyle, deeper on what you were just talking about, bro. I'm in your pockets. I'm getting in your pockets, bro. I'm where the lint is at now.
It's good.
Okay. Bro, your lifestyle changed drastically. Drastically. Young nigga from Cleveland, bro.
Yes.
Dirty town.
Bro, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't you dare.
Hey, I'm just playing. I ain't got no.
This man ain't never been to Cleveland.
Yeah, I ain't never been there. I ain't got no hate, bro. I just hate him. Nah, but bro, from Cleveland, right? And exposure to the world, decent. You know what I'm saying? Exposure to outside things, cool. I think probably very similar to Omaha, except a little bit more because it's a little bigger there in Cleveland.
Yeah.
Relationship with money, different. Mental relationship, different. Mindset and outlook on life, different. But when you started to become intentional, it expanded your world view and palette. And it opened you up to be able to have a plethora of different experiences, bro. Like on a certain level, man, I envy the amount of experiences that you're able to have. And so like now I'm trying to create more experiences for myself, bro, just being intentional with it. But like, bro, just being able to see you travel to different places, being able to see you, and the envy is not real. Like,
no, I feel
you get what I'm saying?
From.
I'm like, this is dope. This is dope. Like,
it's like, how do I create that for myself too?
Yeah. You've created a lifestyle where, and I believe it all ties back into that mindset component that you talked about, right? Like you've been able to create a lifestyle that, many people pretend that they're living, right? But you're doing it sustainably. Like, bro, you're traveling like once a month to some beautiful places, and you're not just staying for a couple of days. Like, you're there, and you're enjoying it, and you're living it. And then on top of that too, digging in your pockets a little bit deeper. Now I'm with I'm there, bro. I'm there.
Somebody said you want to be in the seams.
Yeah, I want to be in the seams, bro. I was in the factory when they sold up them jeans, dog.
Jesus.
Dog. But even having conversations with your wife about like, we're thinking about purchasing properties over in the islands and having serious conversations about that. Not just like, oh, it would be cool to live. Like you guys are actually pursuing that. Can you talk more about that and how your mindset has been able to put you in position, not only mentally, but financially, emotionally, physically, to be able to make those different types of things happen in your life? Because I believe that is where people want to be. Like people, we talk about like this thing of like financial freedom. We talk about this thing of like, I want to be a travel bro or whatever, you know what I'm saying? Like people talk about this stuff, but then they do it at a capacity that is not sustainable. Right? Like I'm just spending my bottom dollar and now I'm stressing out and I don't know how I'm about to make this happen. But look at me, I'm over here giving like motivational quotes on the deck of my cabin, but I got to go back to work because damn, if I don't, like I'm struck, you know what I'm saying? Like talk about that.
Yeah. I didn't anticipate like this coming up in our conversation, but I'm reflecting on playing baseball for quite a few years from age 8 or 9 to 24. And my dad used to always tell me to know the game. And that was something I prided myself on doing and working hard. You know, I think there's very few people who are going to outwill me in something. Like I just have like a tenacity about who I am as a person. And when I think about the know the game concept, I'm like, man, I've been applying that to my life outside of baseball too. You need to know what game you're playing. You need to know what you're getting into. And I think for me and Rach, who have both been very high achieving individuals, the game was always, you know, get a graduate degree, focus on doing this, you know, make enough money to do all of this. And we did that and spent countless hours, blood, sweat, tears, and otherwise getting these degrees. And then we realized this is great and it's important and it's wonderful. And this is not everything, you know? So I think for us, this idea of living in, you know, the Caribbean or living in Costa Rica on the Caribbean side or somewhere in Costa Rica, it's about creating a lifestyle that we actually not just want, but need for ourselves. Like I am very much a spiritual person in the sense that I know that I was put here for a purpose. I know that there are things outside of my general frame of reference that are greater than me that I have no explanation for. And I want to be connected to that. And I want to ensure that I'm honoring the person that I am and what I was designed for. And I think thinking about that, you know, capitalism is huge here in America and it's huge in a lot of other places too. And I think our brand of capitalism beats people down, bro. It just beats people down. No way the wealthiest country in the world, gonna get on my high horse for a little bit. No way the wealthiest country in the world shouldn't be able to give people the opportunity to have healthcare and have these other social safety nets where people aren't just living out on the streets and struggling with so many things. But it's not just the fact that we have all of this money, it's the fact that there is things by design that create some of these situations. So we're like, do we have to do this? Like, do we have to? I think we all live here and this is our culture. It's like the fish in water, right? We think that we have to be a part of this. And I know somebody who moved to Spain right before the election and she's loving it. It's just such a slower pace of life. And I want to be able to have that and have community and know my neighbors and not just be so distant from everybody. Luckily here where I live, you know, my neighbors are retired. I have like 4 or 5 people that live next to me and we talk to each other. But I would say that's by and large, that is not the norm. Everything is moving so fast. And again, coming back to the human being versus human doing, how many people actually have the time, energy, capacity to just be? I want to be able to just be. I want to have walks on the beach or be close enough to walk on the beach and just have a slower pace of life. You know, less, being able to do less, but receive more, being able to maximize my experience and have less of them. So the whole quality over quantity thing. And I think if we continue to live here full time, it's so easy to get caught up in, oh, I need to do this. I need to do this. Spend so much time doing this. When it's like low quality experiences. Like I just don't want to do that anymore, you know? And I understand there's a certain level of privilege to be able to get to this conversation to even be able to have this, you know? And I'm just thinking to when I first met Rach together, we were making like 20K a year. And now we've 10X that, you know? So, and that's probably only going to continue to grow with the work that she does. And then me, you know, full-fledged get into my business as well. So you talked about mindset and you have to even be open to things not necessarily looking the way that you anticipate. Because I got fired and let go from my job in January of 2023. And that was not the case as far as envisioning and dream casting and thinking things were going to go a certain way. And then Rachel started in private practice 2 weeks after that with no caseload. So it's like, damn, you went from being absolutely okay to like, okay, we are going to scrape by this month, maybe. So how do you let these situations in life where you absolutely get your ass handed to you and you're getting beat up and bruised and bloody, how do you let them fortify you and not bury you? How do you let them help you grow and not just become another thing that you can become pessimistic or cynical about? That takes a lot of intestinal fortitude. Like you have to be open to understanding that all of this isn't going to go the way you want it to. But I'm a firm believer that no matter what it is, life is going to ebb and flow. Good times don't last and neither do the bad ones. That's just the reality, right? And there's this parable to ask, what is good or bad? We get so attached, myself included. We get so attached to what's going on because expectation is huge. And in some regards, like, I get it. And that expectation creates a lot of potential negative experiences that we can have, you know? It's why certain people are really good at their job. They remain even keeled no matter what. They don't get too high, they don't get too low. And I think my experience with going through so many different things, particularly over the last decade, I'm really excited to create a life that feels spiritually aligned with who I am as a person and continue to taking care of this temple and then being able to care for and love on the people that I love and care for.
Love that answer, bro. I love that answer. We're getting close to the end of time, man. There's so many other questions that I could ask, and so many different routes and ways that we can go. But I kind of want to wrap it up with this. What's one principle that you live by now that you think everyone should adopt? And if they want, let me rephrase that. What's one principle that you live by now that you believe everyone should adopt in their life if they want to live a more fulfilling mental, emotional, just holistic life?
I brought this up with you beforehand, and I'm like, man, where am I gonna fit this in? I think routinely challenging your ego. That is so vital. No matter how famous you are, no matter how much money you have, no matter who you are on any opposite end of the spectrum with thinking about different traits and personality things, our ego can lead us astray, man. You know, I think if we think about, you know, people who have risen to fame or whatever you want to call it and then fallen down, oftentimes because of this thing between our two ears. And if we think that we're hot shit, I have a lot of experience seeing God or the universe letting people know it's like, hold on now. You know,
that ass.
How do you bring it back and slow down enough to be like, you know what? That good thing that happened to me or that bad thing that happened to me, it's not the end of the world. Because I realize when we get so into our emotions about something and we get down on ourselves and we become self-conscious, or if we're egotistical and we think it's all about us, both of those things are a conflict of ego because we think we're so unimportant or we think we're all important. It's two sides of the same coin, you know? So how do we come back to ourselves and say, you know what? I need to slow it down. My ego is not important. I shouldn't take this personally. Because at the end of the day, like so many things we take personally, like we got to depersonalize our experience from that thing. And we got to slow down and really dive in and say, you know what? Take a breath, recalibrate, and keep moving forward. So I think if we're able to challenge our ego in a way that's healthy and not beat ourselves up, not have like this neurotic guilt around always being a failure, if we can really challenge that ego, I think we can continue to create positive emotional experiences and really, really, really think about the things that we want to do and be effective at it and successful at it.
That's deep, bro. That's deep. That's good. Yeah, bro, we right at time, man. I appreciate you just being willing to get behind the camera, man.
Yeah.
And I know what you talked about today is going to impact a lot of lives because you already impacting lives on a daily talking about this stuff with your clients anyway. So it's just a matter of getting it on camera. And actually, everybody out there, man, y'all should be seeing Bryan here soon. Really pick up with just like his content and the things that he's putting out there in his own business too. So we got to hear on wax now. So
that's right.
Now you got to live up to it, man, because there's so many people out there who need to hear the things that you are saying. They need to get the keys that you have, bro. Because they will impact lives and they will truly change lives and help people to develop and cultivate that mindset that you truly are rooted in and that you believe in, bro. So again, appreciate you, bro. And everybody out there that's watching. No, not everybody. I want to talk to just you that's watching. I appreciate you for tuning in to another episode of the CYR Podcast. When you clean your room, you change your life, you change your reality, and you create your resilience. I'm Peyton Hogan, and I'm out, man. That's all we got.
All right, man.
How that felt?
Love it.
Yeah, it was good. That was good. Wasn't too bad. No, it was.